Jim, John, thanks for joining me today. We're going to talk a little bit about the pulp hero Doc Savage. I really appreciate you guys joining in for this. How you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks, Jeff.
Doing well, Jeff. Thank you. How about yourself?
A little early for me, but doing okay. Hopefully the internet connection will cooperate. Jim, I understand you've been reading, fiercely a bunch of Doc Savage books recently. What are your initial thoughts about reacquainting yourself with Doc Savage?
Well, yeah, I've been trying to read as much as I can. So my first thought was to read them in order. And then I thought, well, I'm only going to get a limited time to really read them. So I read the first one, Doc Savage, Man of Bronze. And then I just picked randomly. I picked The Lost Oasis.
I picked a good one there.
Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it. And then Fear Key, which I know you said was kind of a mid Doc Savage adventure, but I really enjoyed that one as well. And I read one of the later ones. I wanted to read one of to see how the later ones were different than the earlier ones. So I chose Death is Around a Black Spot in one of the omnibus volumes.
Great title.
It is a great title, but it threw me off at first. It was a real abrupt change from what you expect Doc Savage to be. And I'm thinking, is this bad? First of all, I'm thinking this was like written by a 13-year-old, but then I just realized, well, no, he's not. Whoever wrote it, I don't think it was Kenneth Robeson. He's not writing a Doc Savage story. He's writing like a pulp detective story. And Doc
scientific detective.
Yeah, and Doc Savage is acting like a hard-boiled detective. He's admiring the dames, and he's investigating, and he's doing all this investigation stuff. And he even kind of mentions in the story, I'm not a private detective, but I do what private detectives kind of do. And once I realized, okay, I'm reading a pulp detective mystery, then I was better with it. And I'm not quite done it now, but I should finish it off. It'll take me maybe 15 more minutes to finish it off when I get back to it. They're very short.
Especially those later ones are really short. Yeah. Well, we'll get into that for sure, because it is a marked change from the early Doc Savage books.
A very abrupt change. Very abrupt.
Coming to a cold like that. Yeah. Well, John, how about you? I know you're a massive fan, and you've probably read most of them, but what's your kind of history with the character and the stories?
Oh, I started off as a little kid about the late 60s, noticing those fantastic James Bama covers on the books, especially at the checkout stands, because at that time they had a lot of paperback books at checkout stands at grocery markets and stores. And I was always fascinated by those covers because they were just so incredibly outstanding and eye-catching. But I never took a chance on picking up a book to read because I just didn't know what they were about. And so I guess probably about the mid-70s, no, it was about 1972, 73. I picked up the Marvel Comics when they reprinted their first two Doc Savage comic, which was their adaptation of the Man of Bronze, and read that. And I thought, hey, this is pretty good. I guess I'll go give those books a try. And went and got a book and read it and became a fan and have been reading them ever since. Although I still have quite a few of the ones from the 1940s still to read. So, schooling and career and everything, kept me from reading all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But, now that I'm retired, I'm able to start going back and digging into my huge, voluminous to be read piles of stuff. So.
Yeah, I had kind of stopped reading them for a while, but I too got into them when I was a teenager. I missed the spinner rack time, although I do remember going to like Walden Books or B. Dalton's, and sometimes, if you remember those chains, and they would have I remember the last of the Omnis coming out in there, but I never picked up the Omnis, sadly. I wish I would have. I need to get those now. But I was in my 7th grade English class, maybe. And I was bored after having completed the homework, and the English teacher had a little bookcase, and I was digging through there, and I found The Freckled Shark, and with that great Bama cover, and I was like, what the heck is this? Doc Savage, what? And I took it, started reading it, and I was hooked after that, and I got a lot of them out of the used bookstores. I didn't, buy them new, of course, but
Yeah.
and I kind of, as you mentioned, John, got into other things, and would read them from time to time. But in the last, I'd say 10, 15 years or so, I've been enjoying getting back into them off and on. So, and especially now with having a channel,
Yeah.
I end up throwing a few of them into circulation here and there when I'm reading. So, well, John, I know you were interested in talking about the beginnings of the pulp hero phenomenon and Doc Savage, which of course has to do with its Street and Smith publication. I wouldn't want to say rival, I guess sister series or whatever, the Shadow. Do you want to talk a little bit about the origins?
All right. So what happened with the hero pulp explosion of the 1930s? It started with the Shadow, and the Shadow was the narrator MC for Street and Smith's Detective Story Hour radio show in the 1930s, 1931. And they were using that radio show to publicize their pulp detective story. And they started getting reports that people were showing up at the newsstands asking for the Shadow pulp on mysteries. So they figured we better rush out a pulp so that we can trademark and copyright the character before one of our competitors does. So they contacted Walter Gibson, who was a newspaper writer, a magician, and was the ghostwriter for Harry Houdini and I believe the Great Thurston, to write their character, the Shadow. And Walter decided to use his knowledge of magicians, and he would take the Shadow and dress him all in black so that he could hang out at nighttime in shadows and not be seen, where he could watch and eavesdrop on the criminals as they're talking, and started adding in action and excitement. And the Shadow has been described as being more of a crime master who runs his various agents, most famously Harry Vincent, and sends his agents into the criminal organizations to find out what's going on and get him information. And that also gives him somebody to go and save, and usually blazing with his twin 45 caliber semi-automatics. And they started hearing towards the end of 1931, because originally the Shadow pulp, they were only going to do a couple, maybe 3 or 4 on a quarterly basis. And by the fall of 1931, they were hearing that the Shadow pulps were selling out. So they said, hey, there's something here, so let's see about creating some more heroes. And the managing partner of Street and Smith, Henry Ralston, wanted to do adventure stories, adventure heroes. And he was a huge fan of the character Nick Carter, which was one of Street and Smith's first major successes. It started back in the 1880s. It was actually the first serial detective, predating Sherlock Holmes by a few weeks. And it was a huge, big seller in the late 19th century. And one of the things about Nick Carter at that time, as he was originally envisioned, was that his father wanted him to fight crime. So he started training Nick Carter in various techniques to fight crime, and also training him in how to become physically stronger. So Ralston said, hey, let's take this character here and let's do some more with it. And he talked to one of his top editors, John Nanovic, and they started brainstorming what they were going to do with this character. Ralston based the character of Doc Savage on an actual person that he knew, Richard Henry Savage, who was a soldier, became a lawyer, and became an engineer, traveled the world, and did all sorts of things. And he used especially the last name for the character Doc Savage. And allegedly, he also based all 5 of Doc Savage's aides on actual real people that Ralston knew.
Huh.
And so starting in I think it was 1932.
Yeah, that's what I read. Yeah.
John Nanovic took what they were working on and he wrote a little story, which I don't know if you can see that or not. This is Doc Savage Supreme Adventurer, and this was the actual story that John Nanovic wrote, which turned into the Man of Bronze when they hired Lester Dent to fill it out and write it. And
John Nanovic there as a young man.
Yeah. And so they were looking at Lester Dent, or trying to determine who was going to be the writer for Doc Savage. And Lester Dent was a writer starting to break into the pulps. He had been writing a lot of detective and mystery stories. And also, I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of the other genres that he wrote, his Westerns or his air pulps.
No, I'd love to read them. I have a crime story of his in my big book of adventure stories.
Yeah, I have some of his stories throughout anthologies throughout my collection, but I don't have any pulps that he did. But I have some reprints of his stories throughout.
There's a collection of all of his Western stories that he wrote.
Wow, cool.
Oh, nice.
Hell's Hoofprints.
Yeah.
There's the Blonde Adder, this another detective that he wrote several stories on. And
well, from what I was reading, John, it sounds like one of the reasons why they pulled him in is not only did he try to submit a couple of shadow novels, Dent, but he also was working on his own scientific detective character.
Yeah, I believe it's name, but I don't want to say Lash LaRue. That was
yeah, it was something.
Yeah, something Glenn Lash something or another. There's his air stories.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Wow.
They called him in and asked him if he would write a shadow story so they could see what he was like. So he wrote the shadow story, The Golden Vulture, and turned that into them. They liked what they saw and reading it. So they said, we want you to write this character that we're coming up with called Doc Savage. And they gave him all the notes plus Nanovic's story, Supreme Adventurer, and Dent took it and ran with it. And
had they created his backstory, or was that Lester Dent who did that and just used what
I've read? It seems like that they had created a lot of it, but Dent really embellished it well. I mean, he's the one who came up with the Man of Bronze. He's the one who came up with the name, the Fortress of Solitude. Reading this, and I read this because it's at the back of this edition here, this Nostalgia Ventures edition of the Red Spider and a few others. They have the Doc Savage Supreme Adventurer in there, and they, Johnny is not an archaeologist, one of Doc's aides. Johnny in this one is a physicist, I think. So I think the short answer is they came up with a lot of. I was surprised how much they came up with beforehand, but and Nanovic kind of mapped out they were again at this time. Dan, I think, was involved in story talks with them and things. They had quite a few meetings. They would meet it for lunch, I guess, a long lunch, and hash things out. But Dent really put the bones and sinew. He had the bones, but he put the muscle and sinew and flesh and
it out.
And all that in there.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there. I was just curious.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So, Lester, as Jeff was saying, helped flesh out the characters more and started adding stuff. And they were going to put the Doc Savage pulp out in 1932, late 1932. And they were also going to resurrect the Nick Carter character and put them both out in 1932 to see what would happen. And let's see here. They were beaten to the punch by a rival pulp.
All right. Yeah.
Who got the Phantom Detective out.
Oh.
And the Phantom Detective is actually the longest running of the pulp heroes. It ran from, I think, 1933, a couple of weeks before Doc Savage and Nick Carter appeared, to, I believe, it was 1954 before its pulp was finally ended.
Wow. 54. That's quite long. Yeah.
Yeah. And But in February of 1933, you had Doc Savage appear, and then you also had the revival of Nick Carter appear.
That's awesome. I'd love to read some of those. Boy, those Nick Carter ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the other characters that appeared.
Didn't the Spider come the next year, I think, John?
No, the Spider came out in 1933. Also,
the same year. Okay.
Yeah, same year. Also,
boy, they were jumping on a good thing, weren't they?
Yeah. Also,
what a time to be living in.
G8 and his Battle Aces also appeared in 1933.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so 1933, you had the explosion of the hero pulps, and they all took off, and you started getting more and more hero pulps after, because the public was enjoying that and wanted to read that sort of escapism. So Lester Dent was the primary writer for all 182 Doc Savage stories. Well, I should take that back. He wasn't the primary writer. He used ghost writers to write several of the stories. And for some of the ghost writers, he would go back and clean up what they wrote to make it read more like what he had been writing. And then there was several of the ghost writers that did a good enough job, or either Lester was too busy that, he didn't really make any changes to what they wrote. And
yeah, I think the number I've heard bandied about a couple different numbers, John. I don't know what you've read, that Dent wrote 159 to 161 of the 182 novels. There was a long 181 were published in pulps, and then the Red Spider was never published until later by Bantam, but 182 books. So he wrote the lion's share of them, or like you said, edited heavily, or less in some cases, depending on what he was up to.
Yeah, some of the ghost writers that he used that he didn't touch what they wrote was Lawrence Donovan.
There was W. Ryerson Johnson, who I think he rewrote heavily The Land of Always Night, which is a kick-ass novel. But after that, Johnson kind of got the way to go and didn't need as much editing, from what I read.
Alan Hathaway.
William Bogart.
Also, he wrote a couple, rewrote some of William Bogart's stuff, but there are also several, especially during the late 1940s, that William Bogart was able to write that Lester Dent didn't clean up at all.
There was Davis, right? Davis, was it Harold Davis?
Yeah, Harold A. Davis also wrote some, but for those, it appears that most of those Dent polished up. So
yeah, so quite a few ghost writers, but they're mostly when you pick up a Doc Savage book, you're getting Lester Dent for the most part.
He didn't really have a proprietary interest in it. He was doing these under
for hire, basically.
Yeah, for hire.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I was reading that when he went, I didn't realize how heavily outlined these were. Apparently, at least at the beginning, for quite a while, he would meet with Nanovic, the editor, I guess, of Street Smith there, or one of them, and they would hash out the story. Dent would have to prepare an outline, a very detailed outline, and then a kind of a treatment, I guess, almost. And then if he didn't do that, which sometimes he didn't, he would have to maybe make some revisions if Nanovic wanted changes. So if he did it ahead of time, and then he was pretty much free to go, and he would often go change things around to suit the plot. He was given a fair amount of freedom, I think, from the impression I got, but I was surprised how planned out they were. I guess I shouldn't be, because some of them are not so intricate plots or don't always hang together, but some of them have quite there's some mystery about who is the bad guy, or who is the head of the bad guy, etc. So like Death and Silver is one that has a particularly good mystery.
I imagine he had to stick to a formula for the most part. I mean, if he strayed too far from it, I guess people would have balked at that until later in the series anyway. But they seem pretty formulaic, but not in a bad way.
There's usually someone that's in trouble and it comes to Doc, and he's rarely in it until about the second or third chapter. But There are exceptions, like Fear Key. He's in it from the get-go, so which is always nice. And sometimes he doesn't show up till several chapters in. And then there's almost always, not always, but almost always a good-looking lady involved that falls for Doc. This is the earlier ones. I think the later ones maybe follow a different pattern.
Well, he has a bit of a straying eye in the later ones. I got the impression.
Yeah,
It doesn't really affect him in the early ones, but in the later ones, he can appreciate a good-looking woman, a good-looking frail.
Frail. Yeah, that's what I found in these. Although he might even be complimentary to him, but he's still not really dabbling much in the romance department. And they kind of downplay his amazing attractiveness that is very obvious in the earlier books. But so should we talk a little bit about that, the change? John, I didn't want to curtail you if you were still talking about the background, but you want to mention how the early super sagas, as they're called, euphemistically, I guess, compared to the later, more stripped down version of the Doc Savage Pulp.
Well, I wanted to mention on the formula for writing that Dent famously wrote for Writer's Digest, I believe, his master plot for writing a short story, where he would say, if you're going to write, I can't remember what the exact wordage of for the story,
6,000 words, I think.
He would say, by this point, you got to do this. By this, this few hundred words, you have to do this. By the next few hundred words, you have to do this. By the next few hundred words, you have to do this. By the next few hundred words,
4 chunks, kind of, right? Yeah.
It's that they introduce who you are, introduce the MacGuffin or the mystery or what the plot device is. First round of action, first save, rescue.
And you'd think that would be very restrictive, but there was a lot of leeway in his formula.
And he's very, very imaginative for plots and for evil devices and using locales. And some of his, I know Michael K. Vaughan sometimes talks about how racist the early Doc Savage books are, and some of them are, but I'm always impressed. Dent has done some research, and he throws in a lot of actual language of the territory the country they're in, and tries to, especially, and I would say by the 35, 36, 37, he's starting to really, get a little fewer exclamation points and a little more tighter writing, a little slicker writing. And, but it's interesting how the books, the novels started off quite a bit longer. I think they were starting off about 50,000 words. And by the last the last year or two, in 1948, 49, they were down to 27,500 in some cases. So that's, barely a novel, and it's not considered even novel length these days. But
the omnibus fits like 5 stories in it. Like the omnibus, I'm reading that one in. There's 5 stories in that.
They're mostly 4 to 5. Yeah, the last few are 5 because they're so short. Yeah. I mean, they're thick enough omnibuses, but it's
when they started wartime paper shortages of World War II in the 1940s. January 1944, Doc Savage, or most of the pulps, including the Shadow and all the others, dropped from the standard pulp size of whatever it was, 8.5 by 11 or something like that, down to the digest size.
Oh yeah.
So they started cutting down on the amount of words they would allow in to fit the digest size because of the wartime paper shortage. And for Doc Savage, I think that lasted from 44 to 48. And then for about the last
Bacon, the new editor that had brought back the pulp format, I think.
For the last 3 issues of Doc Savage in late 48 to 49, they went back to the pulp size digest because they thought, hey, let's go back and see if we can get a revival to get people interested in these things again, and not just look at the digests and not be interested in them. So unfortunately, it didn't work.
Digests?
Do I have any?
Do you have any of the original digests? Wow, that's sweet. I have one Doc Savage pulp buried in my stuff back home, which I had here, but I've never seen the digests out there. But I think the Shadow was doing the same thing, wasn't it, John? From what I read, that they did the same. There was a Smith policy.
Most of the pulps, because of the World War II paper shortage, went to digest sizes. Let's see.
Well, John's got his goodies
He's
bag.
got all his stuff
right
handy
there.
there. Yeah.
Well, while you're looking for that, did you find it, John? Okay.
There's
oh, very cool. Cargo Unknown.
Oh, that is cool.
That is cool.
So they're
under the water.
Yeah.
They were really trying to repackage the whole Doc Savage character, weren't they?
Yeah.
Do you have any shadows in the digest too? You don't have to show them. I'm just curious.
No, I don't have those.
There were a lot more shadows. Well, we should say also that Doc was a hit. Shadows, the Shadow Pulp was selling about 30,000 issues at a time in its heyday, and Doc Savage got up that high too. So they were the two big ones for sure.
Yeah. So you can see the difference in the digest and the regular pulp size.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that Doc isn't actually on the cover.
Yeah, because
the earlier pulps, I think, was it the first 3 or 4 years, John, that it was Walter A. Baumhofer or Baumhofer, however you say his name, and then they
Baumhofer. I don't know how many years he lasted as the cover artist for the first few years of the pulp, and then they went through some others. I think Emery Clark, if I remember correctly, and then Modest Stein, and then I think the last few years they had George Rosen, who was also doing a lot of the Shadow pulp covers, who took over for the last few.
So who do you prefer, the James Bama version or the Walter Baumhofer version?
I'm a Bama guy because that's what I discovered first, but he doesn't look anything like Doc would really look. So I think the Baumhofer one is closer to how Bama describes him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like them both for sure.
He does, like Doc does wear some kind of a skull cap though.
Yeah, and some of the earlier ones they mentioned that. Yeah, so I think the only problem with the Doc on the covers, it's fine, I think, but this image on the back that's so famous, I mean, he looks like he's 60 years old, so
he looks older. Well, that was the model. That was Steve.
That was Steve Holland.
Holland.
But Holland was not that old of a guy, but
But Doc Savage's hair was darker than that too. Like my wife, I was reading the one book, and my wife looked at the cover of the book. Oh, she said, "Oh, I didn't know Doc Savage was an albino."
It's I don't know if it was Bob Larkin or who did I don't think it was Larkin. So who did the covers for the omnibus editions? But the Doc looks strange on.
I think that's Bob Larkin.
I think he's a cool artist.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's really good. But there's one of the earlier ones where he looks. It's not Larkin. It's someone who did a kind of half-assed job, as far as I'm concerned.
Would it be that one?
Yeah, that's one of them. That's even better. There's another one that I think it's number 2 or 3 that looks strange. But the one you showed, Jim, that's a pretty good cover, actually.
This isn't bad.
Yeah. I don't. That's that because at least it looks. You could say it's dark bronze or something with this hair, but
the hair, And I don't know. I forget what story that one's illustrating, if it illustrates any one of them. But so far, I've only kind of reread the one in there. Death is a round black spot, and that's more of a murder.
Polar waste, like that cover looks to be, but
it does look like it. Yeah.
Well, Jim, you want to, since we're talking a lot about the making of and the origin of Doc, you want to talk about, for those who don't know, because I think a lot of people think like Nick at the Book Graveyard and some other booktubers kind of have thought or have the impression that Doc was a kiddie series, a juvenile series. Now, I think it was probably aimed at teenage boys, but I don't get the impression, John, that it was considered a kiddie thing at all when it first came out.
I know that Lester Dent, when he said that, was asked that he was primarily targeting 13-year-old boys when he was writing, but the action in them, the violence can be pretty brutal.
The violence is pretty good.
I mean, you could say the same. You could say the same about Tarzan or any of the Edgar Rice Burroughs characters, but they're well suited to a 15-year-old, healthy, red-blooded male. But I mean, adults still. This is what adults read. This is what they read back in the day.
Yeah, with a circulation of 300,000 at its peak, I don't think only 15-year or 13-year-old boys were reading it. I'm sure there were a lot of guys reading it.
I'm sure there was a lot of
ladies too.
There was a lot of parents of 15-year-old boys who didn't want them reading this stuff too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, if they found out some of the violence in them, they'd probably be shocked.
I wrote some of them down in the books I was reading. Like one guy gets in Fear Key, the guy gets chopped right in half. Like he goes up against the door, blade comes out, chops him in half. Another guy gets the top of his head blown off, and this one guy, this is the quote. A thug, Fear Key, Doc smashes the nose of a thug. The hackman's nose was suddenly a flat, scarlet stringing pulp, and he was gagging to keep from swallowing dislodged teeth.
Yes.
It sounds like a Mickey Spillane novel, for God's sake. And the Doc was punching the one guy in the mouth, and you could see the guy's teeth through a split lip. That's pretty violent stuff. Man.
Yeah, that's about as violent as Doc gets in those later books. The first two, though, I mean, he pulls arms out of some guys' sockets. He's on a rampage. And Man of the Bronze, I think you read that, Jim, right?
Yeah, he's killing stuff. He's killing guys left and right.
Yeah,
in Man of Bronze, which I like.
I liked it too. Land of Terror is the same, but his good friend is murdered by this nasty means of death, which are frequent in the novels. And boy, he does not pull punches in that. But I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they decided that was a little too similar to the Shadow. The Shadow isn't quite as grisly, I guess, but the Shadow was, wantonly killing all the bad guys, and they wanted to differentiate him.
Well, that's one of those things that is not quite true. The Shadow didn't kill people unless they tried to kill him. So
he kills quite a few, though.
Yeah, he would, but they usually would be starting it, so he would.
Yeah, that's true.
It.
But that's when they developed Doc's code, where tries not to take life, and sometimes Monk, disobeys him. But quite often the villains are hoisted on their own petard and die by their own.
Well, when you think about it, guys, it's actually easier. Like if you look at the two things, killing the guy or trying to subdue the guy and keep him alive, that's much harder than just killing the guy outright.
Yeah. Well, and as I mentioned, the bad guy usually doesn't make it alive out the end of the book. Some of the henchmen might, but the main guy usually doesn't make it. Not from Doc killing him specifically, although there are a few cases where Monk says he was shooting for his leg when he actually takes the guy's head off or something with the bullet. Monk's much more bloodthirsty, but which is a great
the change thing. I've read that it was actually Henry Ralston, the managing editor, business manager of Street and Smith, who said that it did not make sense for Doc Savage, who is a doctor and took the Hippocratic Oath, to be wantonly killing people. Plus, we want to set a semi-good.
Yes.
But you look at this whole thing where he takes the bad guys and he sends them off to his
crime
hospital, the crime hospital or crime college. What does he do to them there?
That's some brain surgery.
That sounds horrendous to me.
Yeah, it is very
brain surgery.
It's very horrendous. He removes their criminal impulses and reintegrates them into society as contributing members.
It sounds like he's doing lobotomies left and right on these guys.
Kind of.
Yeah, but for those folks who haven't read Doc Savage, what happens is that if the criminals don't get killed by their own inventions and they actually get captured alive, then Doc has an upstate college in upstate New York that he sends the criminals to, and he performs brain surgery on them to turn them into nice, model, respectable citizens, and then gives them jobs back out in the world. And
the crime college comes to the fore in one of the most violent of the Doc books I've read, the Annihilist, where some criminals have found out about the crime college and its whereabouts. And so there's a big final fight outside the campus of this, secret place in the woods somewhere up in upstate New York. But since a lot of people might not know much about Doc Savage, Jim, you want to talk a little bit about who Doc Savage is and who his 5 aides are and your impressions of them?
Well, Doc Savage is he's trained all his life. His father, Clark Savage Sr., he had a goal in mind. He wanted to bring up his son with all the resources and the best training available to make him a superhuman individual. And of course, in the first book, we never actually see Doc's father, but he gets killed kind of off camera, and Doc kind of has to take over and kind of figure out what, solve that. But he's the epitome. I guess you'd call him like a meta-human. He's and
as
there's
close
things.
to superhuman as is physically possible or mentally possible, and still
Well,
remaining.
Yeah, like reading about him and the stuff he does, he almost sounds like he's not human. Like water will run off him, and he stays dry, like water off a duck's back. His eyes kind of glow. He can his and you can explain all that away. Like Philip Jose Farmer says, you might
Yeah,
use some kind of a gel to maybe get the
right.
water off him. And but the
That's
only thing that I can't explain, that I don't think you can easily explain, is the trilling, the noise.
Yeah, the trilling was there from the beginning before
Yeah,
Dent got a hold of it, which is really interesting.
and
So
that's weird to me. Like what
yeah.
human is going to make, like, how do you do that when you're a human?
Have you
Unless you're
seen the
like
Ron Ely George Powell movie, which is not good in a lot of ways,
long time ago.
but
Long time.
the trilling there, the way they do the trilling there, it's like a high pitched, kind of almost like a electronic keyboard
Yeah,
sound. I guess is the best
I
they could do, but I don't know.
I,
It's
I
really
It
good.
remember.
sounds more like
I don't know
wind
what
chimes.
it's supposed to sound like,
Yeah, it's like wind chimes the way they do it.
or the call of a tropical bird through the
Yeah,
jungle trees or something. They have a lot of different ways to describe it. It is weird, but it is a
yeah.
cool thing. It's when it's to show that he's puzzled
Yeah,
or fascinated.
any
Or
number of things could bring this trilling. So
Well, he
so
uses it in one of the later, I think it's Terror Wears No Shoes. It might be the Red Spiders. He uses it in one to kind of identify, hey, it's me, to Monk and Ham, right? They know that this building that was full of these kind of Russian soldiers and bodyguards, that it's Doc is here and they can come up the
because
stairs.
apparently he doesn't know that he does it. He's not even aware that he does it.
Yeah, now that one, it sounds like he can control it. So
It
it's
sounds
a
like
weird thing. Yeah.
So he fights crime. That's his goal in
Yeah.
life, is to fight crime using science and everything at his disposal. He's multi-millionaire. He's rich because he has this unlimited supply of gold
Which
that
happens
he
in
has
the first novel, right? Yeah.
that he has access to in the first novel. Yeah, and then he has these five aides, these five people who help him, and that's Monk, who's a chemist, who's a master chemist, and he looks like kind of like a gorilla. He's got Ham.
Speaks like he's about 12 years old or 15 years old. He
Yeah.
never uses a long word if he can avoid it.
and Ham is a lawyer. He's the best lawyer in the business. And you've got Long Tom, and I forget everything they do now. Long Tom is
Long Tom is an electrical wizard.
he's the electrical wizard.
Like he would fall over if a strong wind would blow. He looks sickly, but he can whip his weight in wildcats, apparently.
And then you've got Johnny, and he's
Johnny,
yeah. And you've got Rennie, who's has huge fists, and he's a big guy.
Ham-hock-sized fist that he likes to punch through doors.
Punch through doors, Rennie, and
he
with
looks
those
puritanical, and he looks really, really dour and sad. But that means that he's happy, and there's lots of action. So
yeah,
basically they're kind of all adrenaline junkies, and they team up that way. They were pals in World War One.
World War One. Yeah,
they were apparently POWs. At least that's what Farmer thinks. I don't know if we have. Do we ever have a hint that ever happened?
From what I remember, I don't remember there ever Dent ever writing something other than they knew each other and fought together in World War One.
He always gives their or not always, but often in the early books, gives their military ranks. Brigadier General, is it Theodore Marley Brooks for Ham, and Monk is Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Blodgett Mayfair or something. So Colonel Renwick and all that. So, but Monk and Ham are by far the most. I think is there any book where they're not in, John? I think that if there is, there's like one.
Oh yeah,
Usually in every single book, pretty much.
They are not in. It's either going to be one. Usually, it's Monk will be in most of them. Ham's not in some of them, and then there's some where they don't have Monk and Ham at all to appear in.
Okay. But it's
Now,
pretty
Monk
rare.
had to have been a favorite character of the readers, I
I
imagine.
think he was a favorite character of Dent too, probably because he gives a lot of time to Monk and Ham. If they're not in some of the novels, it's very few, I would guess, probably.
Yeah,
right?
very few. And,
whereas Long Tom is in the least of them, and then it's Johnny, then Rennie, I think. But in the earlier
with
books,
Doc and his five aides, they fight crime and they help protect the world from these awful threats, these megalomaniacal villains. Yeah.
And Monk and Ham are constantly fighting, and eventually it becomes tiresome to everybody, but except for the reader, maybe. But they also would lay down their life for each other. They're one of those type where they look like they hate each other, and they're both vying for the attention of the pretty female in each, the damsel in each one. Which they're not always in distress. Sometimes they're pretty feisty and pretty aggressive in their own right, trying to get through things, but most of the time they seem to fall for Doc by the end of the book. And
let's not forget the cousin Pat Savage.
Yes, we can't
Doc
forget
Savage's cousin, Patricia Savage. Now I don't know that much about her, but she likes adventure and she wants to be part of the group so she can go and help fight the bad guys.
That's right. She's in Fear Key, so you did encounter her there. She's introduced in Brand of the Werewolf, which with the Bama cover, not Bama cover, sorry, that was a Mort Kunstler cover, which is an awesome cover, but one of the biggest bogus bait and switches of covers in any book, because there's no actual werewolf in there, and I never like telling people that because I don't want them disappointed like I was.
Yeah.
But she appears in that when they go up to Canada and they first meet her, and she comes back. Her second appearance is in Fear Key, and then she appears in about 44, 45 of the novels, and she's always there with her. Is it a flintlock? She's got like some big pistol.
No,
with
it's a huge Colt.
I
don't want to say Colt pacemaker, but it's a huge old revolver that
the trigger's been taken off.
Grandfather.
It's got the fanning hammer on it.
Yeah, that's right. She's down for action. She's frequently kidnapped, but she's like she is in Fear Key. But there's some of the books, like The Nihilist has a whole chapter which is just her tracking a bad guy and a henchman and having a close encounter, almost being knifed to death and such. So she's not a shrinking violet by any stretch. So and apparently she's a complete knockout. She's like the physical
version of Doc.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And opens a very exclusive beauty salon that caters to the rich, and so she becomes quite well off. And sometimes they hide out at her or visit her at the beauty salon in some of the books.
I want to go back to talk about Doc's character some more. As we mentioned that he's a medical doctor, he's world famous, cutting edge medical doctor, but he's also had training. Growing up, his father sent him to various masters of various fields to learn from them.
He knows every language you can think of.
He knows as a multilinguist. He's probably at the top of many of the sciences. Each of his aides are tops of their fields that they represent.
But he's better than them.
Doc's even better than them. And one of the things on explaining his superhuman physical abilities is that every day he does a 2-hour physical training exercise where he's training as well as building up his body, building up his muscles. He's also building up his 5 senses and working on his brain and everything else.
And he has tons of gadgets. He has little glass bulbs full of anesthetic gas. And you must like Philip Jose Farmer jokes about this in his awesome overview, his apocalyptic life. He must rattle and clink as he walks along because he's got so many gadgets on him.
He's got false teeth where he hides things, like hides things under his fingernails and under the skull cap of his hair that he wears.
Of course, that's only in a certain book when it's required, of course.
Yeah.
For sure, he has the vat in his many pockets in his vest where he pulls out things. He
Yeah.
always has a little grappling hook. In fact, I read one, I think it's Terror Wears No Shoes. It might be the Red Spider, where he mentions having this little grappling hook thing that he carries around out of nostalgia almost, and he's pretty sure that it was pretty sure it says he was pretty sure it had saved his life a time or two. You know, it's kind of
He used it, I think, in Fear Key. It's on a silken cord with
right.
a grappling hook. It's on his belt or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think.
I think so. Yeah. Again, something Batman might have cribbed from eventually.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm sure
Batman fans and Superman fans don't like to hear this, but you know, Doc predates them by quite a bit. So
yeah,
And
I'm sure
the
Doc
writers,
inspired a lot of these characters.
yeah, the writers Jerry Siegel and Bill Finger for Superman and Batman were huge Doc Savage fans. So they took a lot of the stuff that Doc Savage did and incorporated it into their characters, Superman and Batman.
well, of course, also the Shadow, I'm sure, was a huge influence.
The Shadow,
yeah.
Primarily was Batman, but Batman also, and the fact that he did all of his training afterwards, the same as Doc Savage.
And Bruce Wayne, the filthy rich side of it, yeah.
Well, the Fortress of Solitude, right? Like they stole that right from Doc Savage.
That's without even
Superman's
changing
Fortress.
the name. Yeah.
And the what was I going to say?
And maybe also the Boy Scout kind of demeanor that Doc becomes from the third book on is definitely part of Superman's makeup, I think.
Yeah.
You know, the decent
definitely
guy trying to do the right thing sort of thing.
And also, for those of you Star Trek fans, Spock's nerve pinching of people knocking them out came from Doc Savage. So,
yeah, I didn't think of that. You're right.
And I think
we should also mention about Doc that he has a huge fleet of planes, a sub, a dirigible at one point for several books, all kinds of cars, bulletproof roadsters and things that he keeps in a hangar that can be reached from his Empire State Building, although it's never stated in the books, but it's meant to be the Empire State's Building, 86th floor. Is that right? The 86th floor.
86th floor.
And they have a special.
His fleet got very, very diminished in the later books, apparently.
Yeah.
Like they really downgraded Doc.
And his wealth, too. That gets really downgraded. I guess, we talked about this behind the scenes, but kind of the sign of the times. They were trying to move the pulp with the mood, the post-war mood,
Sure.
And maybe, in the Depression era when Doc started, people didn't have a hatred of the rich because a lot of them were doing some good deeds. And so Doc being wealthy was just considered part of his, charm, I guess. But maybe in later years, being like you say, Jim, more of a Seamus type, or I think he goes into like a kind of commando raiding sort of World War II, fight the Axis powers during World War II. And then before and after that, he kind of more of a detective that doesn't really, having a lot of money doesn't really fit that.
It might reflect on what kind of fiction was popular in the day as well. Like the Private Eye hard-boiled stories were really popular at that time. And maybe that's what they were trying to emulate with those later stories. Because it reads very, like the one I'm reading now, reads very much like just a hard-boiled mystery story. And he even talks like that.
Oh, geez. Well, one thing I did notice is they must have course corrected a little bit, because reading some of these from the 48 and 49 years, some of the last years of the pulp, I can see still the vestiges of Doc from the earlier stories. They talk about several. I mean, he's much more human scaled. He's nervous. We get much more interior. He doesn't sleep well because he's worrying about Monk and Ham and that kind of thing. But he still has the trilling. He's still, they still talk about him. He's a very impressive man, and the villains are, aware of him and fear him and such. So that's still there. Maybe it goes away during the World War II era, but they definitely human scale him down. He's
Now, have you guys read the very last story where he goes in the cave and meets the demons?
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
And he runs away screaming in terror, apparently, which is
it's not quite. Yeah, it does happen, but it's not quite as.
Okay.
yeah, but it's
because
because
that's
he's
totally
coming
off character of Doc Savage. I mean,
Well,
you don't
it's-
expect him that of
they're
him.
coming face to face with some real. I mean, it really does seem like he confronts hell, demons, or whatever. But it's a really good book, actually. Up from Earth Center. Yeah, I liked it. Actually, it's short. It's very short, but I've read it. John, what do you think of Up from Earth Center?
I agree. Going back to what you said about course correcting, I forget who exactly the last editor was, whether it was Daisy Bacon or Babette Rosamond, but they decided at that point to try and revive interest in the Doc Savage pulp. Let's take him back to what he was like in the 1930s. So for about the last 3 or 4 pulps, I think they tried to bring him back more to what he was like in the 1930s. For reading Up from Earth Center, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good.
It's very slickly
read.
written. I think when Dead has gotten his writing chops are superior by that stage.
By then, though, I guess like when all the soldiers came back from World War II, they were much more jaded than they were prior to that, and they were looking for a different type of fiction than the escapism of Doc Savage.
And even in those last pulps, he's very human scale. He's not. I mean, he's like he's more. I'd say it's like a proto James Bond almost in a way, where he's definitely not got the womanizing side of it. Although he, like you say, Jim, he will admire. And in this one, there's some woman, Sari, I think, a Russian counter agent that he meets that he's very impressed with, not just in her looks but her capabilities. And he tells her straight out, which Doc would never have done in the earlier books. But he's not talking like a hard-boiled Seamus or anything. He's talking like his normal self, but he's much more chatty, I think, in the later books. He doesn't. He keeps to his ideas to himself, and sometimes doesn't respond quite often, which really drives the woman of the female characters crazy.
Well, drive any woman crazy.
Yeah.
So that book there, Jeff, that's the Red Spider, right?
This is the only one of these pulp reprints from Nostalgia Ventures that I have. Unfortunately, the editor and publisher of these is Anthony Tolan, who I think is a friend of John's, right? Yeah. John, you know him, and he did every single one of these and every single one of the Shadows, which is a massive achievement.
So that was
all but the last 3 of the Shadow. He did. There were 3 that Bruce Elliott, the last writer before Walter Gibson came back, wrote that he didn't get a chance to publish before Condé Nast pulled the
anyway, right?
No, they aren't good, but he got all of Walter Gibson's, all of Theodore Tinsley's, and several of Bruce Elliott's reprinted.
I'm curious, like this was written but never published.
Yeah, the Red Spider. John probably knows the details, but Will Murray, of course, we should mention Will Murray, who is a pulp scholar and has went on to write more Doc novels. I haven't read any of his novels, but I have. Right. He's an encyclopedia of knowledge about pulps in general, and he says that the Red Spider was written as "To Hell, Madonna" by Lester Dent. And it was towards the end of the run. I think it was it 47, 48, John?
Let me check and see.
And for whatever reason, he had done an earlier story about Russia and fighting communist threat or whatever, and it didn't go over well, apparently. And the editor at that time was not overly friendly to the Doc novels anyway, and was pushing them to the back of their own pulp, which is strange. But she refused to publish it for whatever reason. So later, when it was discovered amongst Dent's wife's, I forgot her first name, Norma Dent's papers, somebody found them. I don't know if it was Will himself, or she found them when she was going through this complete manuscript. And Bantam snaffled it up and published it in 79, I think it was, John.
Yeah, 1979.
It had this Bantam cover because, of course, it never had a pulp cover. And then they crammed 2 more of there was, it's short enough they could cram 3 in there. So we have Return to Cormoral and Terror Wears No Shoes.
Wow.
And I read all 3 of these. Plus it has in the back, and there's always these little introductions and things. And in fact, Anthony Tolan, the publisher, does one himself, which is really excellent, talking about Doc and the Red Spider, I think. And it also includes the Nanovic treatment, the opening treatment, the
I'm not sure.
Supreme Adventurer.
This
Yeah,
one's called The Red Terrors.
Right.
yeah, that's an excellent book too. Yeah, I have that one with the Vallejo cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not any relation. It's just, like
Okay.
they use murder in about 20 of the book titles,
Yeah.
Murder Melody and,
Yeah.
Death and all that, the Green Death, Dust
Murder
of Death,
Mirage.
Murder
Mirage.
Yeah. Yeah, you got
Yeah,
a good stack there.
The
But,
Red Spider was written and submitted in May of 1948. So
okay, thank you. Yeah,
Oh.
so it's getting close to the end, and just was never published at the time. But it's a good read. It's but it's basically Doc behind enemy lines, trying to depose get some information and depose kind of Stalin's right hand man there, and get information back. And they fake a kind of rocket launch that supposedly goes off cue, and then Doc is in a plane kind of going on the same flight path to fool the radar, and he's dropped down in a little capsule, and Monk and Ham are already undercover there near the Kremlin and stuff. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's pretty well done. But it's a straight up spy story, really.
Everybody was fighting the commies back in the day.
Well, there's friendly Russians in this one too, which helps, I guess. So
That's good. There's
a rival faction, I suppose you could say. So, but yeah. It was interesting. It was just kind of the pre-Cold War era, I guess, coming in. But they went back to a little more fantastical base with that final one, the Up from Earth Center, the 181st.
Yeah, to let people know, if you haven't really read any of the Doc Savages, they're kind of what is the genre of weird menace, where you have some sort of really weird, either supernatural, paranormal thing that happens, crime or something that people don't know about. A lot of times it's super science, but if it's looking paranormal or supernatural, as Doc and his aides get into investigate and find out what's going on, it turns into the old, like the Scooby-Doo mysteries where, oh, it's not a ghost, it's Farmer Jones with a mask or sheet on, and it's sort of like that.
Yeah, although there are, there is an island full of dinosaurs in Land of Terror. There are giant white ape men fighting white-haired native people in some remote part of Africa in the Phantom City. There, in the Land of Always Night, there is a underground city of people who feed off of mushrooms, and so there are weird and Red Terrors. There's some ancient descendants of ancient Greeks that have lived in this kind of gas bubble under the sea and stuff. I mean, there's plenty of fantastical stuff. But yeah, John's right that most of the time it's a kind of Scooby-Doo thing where there is a menace, but it's got a scientific background. So there are roughly classified as science fiction, I guess, science fiction adventure. But
and how many times was like New York City terrorized in all the books? And he had to either by gas or by earthquake or by something or other, where New York City was going to be destroyed.
Snow, where if this kind of ash-like substance falls on you, it dissolves you, and there's the fluttering death. I had a laugh, Jim. I know you read The Lost Oasis. Oh, what's that? This
is Resurrection Day. This is one of the weird ones where Doc Savage actually brings back someone who's dead to life.
Oh, really?
The setup is that he's developed this technique where he can bring somebody who's dead back to life. So they say, who do you people want to see brought back to life? And the public chooses King Solomon. So they think they've found King Solomon's body and they're going to bring King Solomon back to life. But the criminals have substituted the mummy of a pharaoh, of an evil pharaoh who was incredibly rich and who died with all of his loot being hidden. So they want to find it where the loot is. So Doc brings this mummy back to life. And that's one of the weird ones with the weird science. So
there are some weird ones for sure. And ones that are a little more grounded, it just depends. So some of them are practical, like I was reading some people, Will Murray, in fact, said you could tell almost any kind of story in a Doc novel. Like the Red Skull is basically a Western. Some of them are like Westerns almost. And they even had a juvenile fiction one where Doc most of the book is written from the point of view of 4 kind of teenage boys, and one of them is like the Doc figure of this group, and then Doc Savage comes in to assist them. And there were, of course, more mysteries, and sometimes you have some gothic aspects, I guess. But I really enjoyed because Jim, you read The Lost Oasis, and some guy named Ed Hulse. I think, John, is Ed Hulse like another pulp expert or scholar?
Yeah, he's a pulp expert who does he runs the Blood and Thunder magazines where they do reviews or scholarly articles on pulps. And
I wish I'd written the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
He does books, and I think he shows up at both Windy City and Pulp Fest with his stuff for sale. And I think for one of them, I think it's Pulp Fest or maybe Windy City, he helps program bringing in movies that are pulp based or based on pulp characters for people to watch.
Well, I was reading last night on Wikipedia about talking about this pulp series and such, and he apparently has been quoted as saying Lester Dent was, what did he call it? Recklessly generous with his plot ideas, and he quoted about. I wish I had written down the quote, because he quoted about Lost Oasis, that in that alone you had a beautiful lost aviatrix, you had vampire bats, you had what is it? You had like a lost city, you had a autogyro fight. I mean, he listed like 12 things in this one book that I haven't read it for a while, but so much happening in one book that you think that he could have parceled those ideas out if he had known he was going to write so many, but.
Yeah. Oh, another thing to bring up about Lester Dent, because as we've been saying, Doc loves inventing stuff, using gadgets. Lester Dent loved doing it in his real life. He built a house in La Plata, Missouri, that he put all sorts of cutting edge scientific gadgets in, electric garage door openers, other things that, were not really that popular or not available to the average person to get. And I think it was late 1940s, early 1950s. And so he used his knowledge and love of gadgets and cutting edge science that he puts into the Doc Savage books.
Oh, he must have known, like he must have read like popular science, because he'd bring these things up in the stories before they were even available to the mass market, before anyone even knew about these things.
Yeah, he had Doc using television in the 1930s.
He was ahead of his time.
Answering machines with electronic tape. In the 1930s.
So he was on top of his science knowledge.
Sure. Yeah, he was quite an adventurer too. He had a sailboat and he went treasure hunting and diving. He could fly planes. I mean, he was. I'm sure he put a lot of that knowledge, because there's a lot of elements of Doc Savage that read like Dent knows what he's talking about. As far as how to fly a plane and various instruments and describing the movements of the plane, because Doc does some pretty fun tricks with the jet in Return to Cornwall there. So it seems like if he didn't know, he researched it well enough to at least pass by. If not, it wasn't. Some of the final resolutions are a little like, well, I don't know, but
I think it was a Lost Oasis, and just the way I think he was describing the autogyro and the way it flew. Like there was some knowledge there. He knew what he was talking about for sure. He didn't just pull it out of thin air.
Yeah, it's like, especially if you read some of the 1930s stories where Doc, or it's generally Doc, is flying a plane that he's designed himself, top of the line plane,
faster than usual,
but they're being chased by enemies who are trying to shoot him down. So he'll start describing how Doc is flying the plane and doing all these little things that you would not know unless you were an actual pilot, that you would have to do, such as flipping, yawing the plane to help cut speed, or if you're coming in for a landing on some very short runway that's very bad, some of the things you would have to do with the plane to help it lose speed as it's coming in for the landing, that only good pilots would know about doing.
Right.
Right. Yeah. He's talking about the Zeppelin and how a Zeppelin flies, and the stuff involved in the whole operation of the Zeppelin. I mean, he didn't just make that up.
Yeah.
And he didn't. We don't want to give the impression that he bogs down with paragraphs of this stuff. It's just, you know, sprinkled in with the action for the most part. If he does give exposition, which he does occasionally, it's usually a paragraph. You know, he doesn't mess around. In the earlier books, to kind of contrast with the later ones that we were talking about, they were at the human scale doc and stripped down more or less fantastical plots. Most of the 30s books are pretty wild. I mean, we have some really incredible stories and, you know, nonstop action, you know, and Dent, that's one thing we should say that Dent is good at, even from the get-go, is describing action, I would say. Some of the action is really, you know, headlong and well described, you know.
And relentless. They start out with action and just carries you through the whole damn story. Some, like Man of Bronze, just didn't stop. You know,
and it's not like he talks pages and pages of describing a fight. He doesn't, but it's, you know, they're usually over pretty quick. But there's so many of them.
You through. Yeah.
Action and intrigue. Great. Yeah. And Jim, since you read some recently, you want to talk about your, you know, after your what, I guess, was there anything that surprised you or that you had forgotten about after not reading them for a while that struck you after rereading these recently?
No, nothing that really surprised me. No, I mean, I had a pretty good, you know, recollection of what Doc Savage was. And I know you guys read his Apocalyptic Life, and I don't know if you read Philip Jose Farmer's Tarzan Alive. I read these and I keep in mind, like I know, like I love the Walden Newton universe that Philip Jose Farmer came up with. I love the idea that all these characters lived in the same kind of universe and they interacted with one another, and that Doc Savage was Tarzan's cousin or something like that. I thought that was so cool. But I knew what to expect going in because I read most of these before. Like I think I told John this before, but the very first books I got were these.
Oh, right. Yeah, let's see those.
Ones. And I read them as a kid. There's the first four. Are they upside down?
Yeah, they're upside down.
Here, let me make you big there, Jim.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah. And so I mean, nothing surprised me at all, and I knew what I was getting into. It's nice to refresh myself. There we go.
Yeah,
these are lovely books, and I finally got
a nice 4 set there too. Yeah, I think John, do you know how many they put of these out? I think there were
6.
8.
They put 6 out.
6.
John told me 6. I didn't know how many, and John said, "Yeah, there's another one. I think the Sargasso Ogre is number 5, I think."
They don't. Who does the covers on those? Do we know? Because they're not.
Yeah. Hold on.
Those are like
cover by Ben Otero is the artist, and then there's illustrations inside which aren't as good by Ron Villani. Let's see if I can find one of them.
That's cool though. So those are kind of aimed towards younger readers, I guess, even though they're not abridged, right?
I don't know if they are or not. I mean,
I would say they probably, if there's potentially offensive racist language in them, they might have changed it, because the book that you showed that's in that 4-book collection, The Ghost Legion, the actual original title was The Spook Legion.
That's right.
Possibly they might have said, you know, the use of spook might have raised some racist concerns, so they changed that
way. I don't think
there was a lot of violence too. Like I said, the Man of Bronze. I mean, a guy's being killed left and right, and arms torn off, and so I imagine they did kind of tone that down a little bit.
When did those come out? Were those from the mid '60s?
No, they came out about the mid. I want to, because I saw them about 77, 78, and I was thinking, what are they doing? Are these for kids or what? And, you know, and I picked up a couple of them and looked through them because I did not have the Spook Legion. So I figured, is the Spook Legion the Ghost Legion that they have here? And so I got
Bantam called it the Spook Legion, so they didn't have.
Yeah, that's the original title from the Pulp. So
the copyright renewed 1963. The illustrations are copyright 1975.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So mid-70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
75, 76. I think they
Those are
came
really
out.
cool to have, though. I'd love to get them.
They're nice. I
I've never
love
seen
them.
them in the wild. So
Nice
you found a
hardcovers.
four book set too. That's really cool with the.
And I've had them since I've been like 13, 14 years old. I think I got them for Christmas or something like that.
Maybe they were out when they first came out. Then they were.
Yeah. Oh, they were brand new. They were brand new.
Wow. So
yeah, but I love the Doc Savage stories, and I wish I had more. I don't know why I never actually bought more of them, because they used to be so many available. And I've got, like I said,
you got a good stack. You got one. We should talk about the weird. I don't know why, but some of the later Bantams singles were put with a white spine instead of the traditional black.
I've got one there. Yeah.
Yeah, they did it with the couple of them, but yeah. Well, in my case, I thought I had quite a few, and I had stopped reading Doc Savage for a while, other than once in a while. But when I brought them here, I realized I only had about 50 or 60, 50 or 55 or something. And so the last couple of trips back to the States, I've been buying ones from my list that I don't have, but I don't have any of the omnibuses, and I don't have any of the doubles. There were a couple that were doubles there when
I've got one double.
Yeah, those are hard to find. That's why I kicked myself. You can get them on eBay, but I've never. There's a bookstore in Salem, Oregon that I go to sometimes, and they have a really cool room upstairs with what they call rare books. Is where they have their Robert E. Howard and they're not rare, but it's the rare book room, they call it.
Hard to find.
Where they charge higher prices because they claim they're rare.
Yeah, they're $5 a piece, but they're usually in good shape. And you have to leave your driver's license with the cashier to be able to go into the room. And whenever I go in there, no one's up there. And I go in there, they have ace doubles and they have all this stuff. And I saw a bunch of docs. I bought the last time I was there in 2024. I bought 10 or so there, but I didn't see a single omnibus. So
really, wow.
Yeah, I went to the Tacoma Book Center, which is the biggest used bookstore in Washington State. They had a lot of Doc Savages, no omnibus. So I think they probably got smaller print runs by that stage. But all credit to Bantam for putting every single one of them out. That's pretty surprising, because the Shadow never got that many paperbacks. It got quite a few. But
I might have to take John up on his offer. I might have to grab some of those doubles or triples that he has in his collection.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of Doc fans that have the omnibuses and maybe even duplicates of those. And I found some on eBay. I need to track some down. I never really pursued it much because I thought I wasn't that interested. Doc's more human scale, and he's fearful and nervous, and that's not the Doc I want. I want the earliest Docs. But reading some of these later ones, they're quite good. They're quite fun.
My problem is I didn't physically think about actually going out and collecting them. I just saw, if I ran into them and I saw them, I might pick one or two up. Like, it's not like my Robert E. Howard collection where I actually went out to collect and look for them and buy them, So I'm lucky I have what I have for Doc Savage.
Well, I think I have about, if I count the 3 in this one, I think I have about 85 of the novels.
Wow,
but
see, that's
I still have 100 to go, So if I get the omnibuses, that would cover most of the 40s, So
yeah.
Well, I'm not going to give out his email address, but Anthony Tolan still has lots and lots of leftover copies of his books for both Doc Savage, The Shadow, and the other pulp characters he reprinted.
They did some. He was involved with the Spider, was he? Did he also?
Yeah, he did some Spider doubles, and Nick Carter, Phantom Detective. He did all of the Avengers series. If you go hunt him up on Facebook, Anthony Tolan on Facebook, and contact him if you want them. He has.
I have to give him a nudge.
I've seen it. He's got storage units. And his home is filled with boxes and boxes of the unsold copies that he's still allowed to sell. He's allowed to sell anything that he had printed before Condé Nast took the license back.
These are the oversized books that Jeff just showed.
These are like, I guess they're kind of pulp size in a way.
They're
I love
pulp size. So.
They have the double column. Like this has 3 of those 27 to 30,000 word novels in 128 pages, plus the treatment, plus some introductions and a little art gallery from one of the contributors in this issue. So,
nice.
They're nicely put together. I would like to get some more. I mean, I love the Bantams, but they're, it's hard to find them in really pristine shape. A lot of mine are a little beat up. Like this has a little tear off the front there.
So that one is called the Spook Legion. So that's the Ghost Legion then you were saying, John.
Yeah, it's basically,
the Spook Legion is the original pulp title. And when they printed that book that you have, they changed it to the Ghost Legion.
Huh.
There's another doc called Spook Hole too. Yeah. So, and of course they mean ghost. They don't mean the racist version of spook. Not to say that they can't be racist once in a while. The Monsters has a pretty cringe-induced. Yeah, you got Spook Hole. Good.
That's
That's with the Pfeiffer. Is that a Fred Pfeiffer cover, John?
Oh,
I think that's Fred Pfeiffer.
Yeah, it's a Pfeiffer.
Which is more impressionistic than Bama.
For the difference between the Bantam docs and what Anthony or Tony Tolan did when he reprinted them is that the Bantams generally would take the text as it was printed in the original pulp, but when Street and Smith were printing the pulps, they would cut out hundreds and sometimes thousands of words from the plot because they wanted to put in additional short stories in the back of the pulp. So with Anthony's books that you're getting the full story that Lester Dent or whoever wrote without all of the changes, the parts cut out. And for instance, a lot of the stories I want to say about 30.
Where did he get them, John?
Will Murray. He and Will Murray are friends, and so Will Murray was his assistant editor and would write, historical pieces in each of the books because you're getting that in addition to the pulp stories.
Did Will get
Will Murray, I believe, is the literary agent for the Dent estate. That's how he got to know Norma Dent. That's how he got his hands on the Red Spider and all this other stuff.
Wow.
So he also got to know, I guess, Condé Nast is the company that bought Street and Smith. So he got to know Condé Nast, and he was able to go into their copies and see all of their files that they had and whatever outlines that are actual, I guess, carbon copies of the stories that Norma Dent did not have. He was able to go find that in the folders for Condé Nast and get that all put together. And that's what they would use for the Tony Tolan would use for his stuff. And I want to say something like,
do you think that extra stuff, I mean, if what Bantam put out was what was in the pulps, I mean, did some of that cutting?
They're about 20
a little more streamlined.
Yeah, they're about 20 some of them that were censored. Well, I don't want to call it censored, but were heavily edited like that. And for I want to say 3 or 4 of the stories, such as Mystery Under the Sea, and I forget whatever else, that they actually cut out stuff that really helped you understand what was happening in the pulp.
Okay. I guess that's what I was wondering is if it was you, because sometimes, when you get an expanded edition like Stephen King's The Stand or something, I mean, there's a little, you don't need those extra 200 or 300 pages, So
no, most of the stuff that was cut out there was no rhyme or reason. It was just the associate editor saying, well, I need to lose about, 1,000 words or so from this story so I can put in 2 short stories. So I'll just kind of go along, and if I don't think something's important, I'll throw it out.
Oh, boy.
Like I said, there are like 2 or 3 stories where it actually makes a huge difference.
So they butchered it. They butchered them. Wow.
Well, I know they also, in the early books, they would often refer to the next adventure at the very end of the pulps. And I think, and Anthony restored that in these, right?
Yeah.
So,
because
terror awaits Doc and his aides. It was awaiting Doc and his aides in Mexico City or whatever, know, and then just like a little kind of a teaser. It wasn't, so they cut those out for the Bantams, of course.
I want to say they're actually because I remember reading about a handful of Bantams where they still had
They
that
might have
in.
a handful of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, very early ones, perhaps. Yeah, but that's true, I'm sure. But for most of them, they got rid of it. And I don't know how long the magazine kept that up. They might have stopped after the first couple of years.
I want to say they did it for, I think I was reading the other day, getting prepared for this. I want to say that they said that just about all of the pulps had them from the beginning to the end.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
You guys want to move into talking about some of your favorite stories or favorite characters or favorite aspects of the books?
sure. Let me throw something up real quick here.
Yeah, John.
So we started off talking about the Shadow kicking everything off, the Shadow starting out as a radio MC narrator for Detective Story. Then starting about 1930, I think it was 1938, they went on ahead and created the own Shadow radio program that most people know or understand about. You got the Shadow with the ability to cloud men's minds. But Doc Savage was on radio in 1935 or 1934.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Really? Yeah, I always wanted to hear that. Let me make you big, John. Hold on.
Okay.
So you can show that off. Okay, give me just a second here.
I know that's me. There you
go.
Yeah, it takes a little while to move it over there.
Yeah, this is the first collection of radio scripts that Will Murray put out in I think it was 1980 or so.
Wow.
And then later on, I believe it's Moonstone, got all of the Doc Savage radio scripts and put them all in one book. And I don't know whether Moonstone's still selling this or not. But if you're interested,
do the actual radio shows exist, John?
No, none of the radio shows exist.
That's what I thought. Yeah, because the only one I can find are the kind of re-dramatizations from the 80s or 90s or something.
I was going to say, because I'd never heard of the radio show before. That's news to me.
I really wanted to, and there was even talk of a TV series. I think in the 60s.
I would love that.
Chuck Connors is Doc Savage.
Really?
Yeah, Chuck Connors would have been not a bad choice, I guess.
He would have been all right. Yeah,
actually,
he's not super buff, but neither was Ron Ely. But
he was when he was younger, Chuck Connors.
Oh, he was plenty strapping of a guy for sure.
He didn't age well. He got a little rough as he got older, but he wouldn't have been a bad choice.
The rest of us. But no, he would not have been bad casting. And frankly, if you look at the Walter Baumhofer Pulp covers, Ron Ely is excellent casting. He's about the best point about that movie, The Man of Bronze, because he plays it pretty great. Yeah, no problem with him. I just wish they hadn't camped it up so much. That was at the post-Batman era, and they made a mistake there, a miscalculation.
I watched it when I was a kid, and I didn't like it. Even as whenever it came out, however old I was, I was so pissed off that they didn't play it seriously, that they had to camp it up.
There's once in a while you could there's a few scenes where you go, like at the beginning when the warrior is throwing the rifle at Doc and it bounces off his chest and he's sliding his hands with the cloth to go down the cable.
Elevator cable.
This could have been something. This could have been really
lost potential, and that's always what bothers me is when you watch these movies.
It's fun. I have kind of a fondness for it because I was so hungry for that kind of stuff when I was younger. But they really miscast. What is this?
This is the unproduced Doc Savage 1975 TV series script.
Wow. You got all sorts of treasures there, John.
Huh?
You got all sorts of treasures there.
Oh, yeah. It's Secret in the Sky.
Wow.
They were going to dramatize that novel. How they're going to do it as a half hour or an hour show? Do you know, John, it was supposed to be?
I don't know that it got much farther than this beginning, but the amount of pages in the script are 49. So I would assume it would have been an hour show. And then this is the Mind Assassins, the unproduced 1978 ABC television movie.
1978. And when was the Doc Savage movie? I'm trying to think. I've got the movie.
It came out in 1975.
75.
Yeah. George
George Powell production.
Right. Yeah. the interesting thing for that is that they were planning on Doc Savage being a big tentpole movie for Warner Brothers.
Oh,
And they had a change in the ownership of Warner Brothers, or the management, so that everything that George Powell was planning for the 1975 movie and the budget he was given was immediately cut back by the new management people. And they did not want the movie to succeed because, it would have been the previous management baby that made all that money. So they started cutting costs and basically turned that movie into what it is, because
not the first nor the last time that
it's
that
all
happens in
politics.
Hollywood.
All politics, man.
It always happens that way, where the previous regime, we don't want to deal with their stuff. We want to do our stuff. Yeah, it's too bad. There were a lot of things that led to that, but I think that no matter what, the casting is the problem. The casting of the aides, as well as the tone. The guy they got to play Monk and Ham, the guys they got to play, just terrible choices. Rennie was good. William Lucking, Bill Lucking is a good choice for Rennie.
Yeah.
And the other guy,
but to be honest, though, Jeff, I mean, those are hard roles to cast.
Monk is really hard. I
always thought
you should have got Lloyd Bachner. He would have been a great Ham.
As Ham,
yeah. He was a ubiquitous character actor. Then he would have been a good choice. He would have had to make himself a little less smug, I guess. But casting Monk is really tough.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy is supposed to be as wide as he is tall, with red shingle.
Arms,
I mean, they couldn't get him
longer than his hang below his knees, his arms.
But I mean, Monk, my favorite, character besides Doc, and to make him belly bucking bad guys in the fights. I mean, come on, Monk's a ferocious fighter. He's throwing guys around, and he can bend. Bend pennies or quarters between his thumb and finger? I mean, he's
okay. One aspect of the stories that I've never dealt with is the comic books. Now, John said you started with the comics. I got every comic book under the sun back in the day, but for some reason, I never got the Doc Savage comics. Now,
there were several iterations, weren't there, John? I mean,
there was a magazine like the Savage Sword of Conan magazine. He was in a magazine for a while. Yeah. Then he had his own comic.
I know he had a cameo in The Rocketeer.
They actually started in the comics in the 1940s. He and the Shadow were both in comics in the 1940s. And the character in the 1940s comics was not at all like the Doc Savage character. He wore, he wore a green hood, which gave him certain powers, and
the superheroes were big. They were trying to cash in on the superhero craze.
The 1960s, Gold Key did put out one comic, which was an adaptation of the Thousand-Headed Man story. And then the next time was when Marvel started in the early 70s. And I think their series in the early 70s ran for 8 or 9 issues.
I remember, was that the one that had Death in Silver adapted?
Yes.
I remember seeing that one. A friend of mine had that, and that was a pretty cool adaptation. I thought.
Then they started with the black and white that you were talking about, Jim, and that ran for, I think, 7 or 8 issues.
Yeah, they never ran very long, it seemed like.
And then the license went over to DC, and I think DC did it for a couple of years or so. And they started out originally, I want to say, in Modern Times with Doc Savage in Modern Times, and it just wasn't very good at all. And then I think Dynamite next took it over in the 2000s or so, I think. And I've just never really paid attention outside of the Marvel ones from the 70s and the black and whites from the 70s.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you got into Doc Savage from the comics, John. And I know a lot of people, I don't know if it was Jim that is that way, but I heard a lot of booktubers talk about getting into Conan from the comics, not from the stories.
It was a long time ago, but I'm pretty certain that I got into Conan first in the comics. But I'm 61. It's a long time ago, but it all happened kind of at the same time. But I'm pretty sure, actually, the first Conan comic I got was the Savage Sword of Conan. I got 3 issues glued to a cardboard back and wrapped in plastic, and 3 issues for $1. And and they were like awesome magazines, like some of the earlier ones, and they're the first Conan comics that I read. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have the same story as I do.
Well, and it's not hard to move from the comics over to the books, because like we were talking about, they were aimed at the 13-year-old and all of us, I guess. But I'm curious though, I know this nostalgia boom was going on when all of this stuff was coming back in the paperback boom, and I don't know a lot about what started off the Bantam reprints, and I think it was in the early 60s when they started, John, the Bantams.
Yeah, 1964.
And
year of my birth.
Yeah, and wow, yeah, and just a few years before I was born. But one of my commenters on one of my videos mentioned the name, and maybe you know him, John, the marketing genius that came up with this logo and the formatting.
Lynn Leone.
What was his name?
I think his last name was pronounced Leone. It's Lynn Leone.
Wow,
he was in charge of the art for Bantam, so he was the one.
Genius. I mean, they just pop off the shelves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, between not just the covers, but the whole design. They change the color sometimes, but the swooshing kind of logo or font and
excellent logo. Yeah.
Here's one of my ones in better condition, the Squeaking Goblin. I mean, what a fantastic! This is like a Hatfield McCoy's story with a sniper wearing a ghost face kind of mask and a coonskin cap and a special rifle that can kill at a distance, and they're up in the Catskills. I mean, again, any kind of story, Pretty, you could think of, a pulp story they would have in the doc.
Well, I got a lot of catching up to do to catch up to you guys.
Well,
you're going to enjoy it too.
Yeah, enjoy it. It's have fun. But I wanted to. You have either one you recollect, Jim, or one of the recent reads. What do you think is one of your favorites?
Well, of course, I mean, The Man of Bronze is probably. I mean, out of the ones I just reread, and The Man of Bronze, because when I was a kid, that's the very first one that I read, and that's the one that sticks with you. That's the one that is set in your head and the one you remember. And I'd have to say that's my favorite one.
I'm going to have to turn in my Doc Savage fan card because, that's the one I haven't read, believe it or not.
No, seriously.
Yeah, I've read about 50.
Technically, you read it when you read the short story, The Supreme Doc Savage Supreme Adventure.
Yeah. And I've seen, for whatever we want to say about the movie is and its many flaws, it does follow in rough outline the story. So, and they refer to, the Mayan language that the Doc and the aides speak to when they want to not be overheard, and the source of his riches. So, but because of the violence, I especially want to read Doc killing a bunch of people one of these days. So I'm going to read it, but it's ironic, but that the first one I haven't read. I've read, at least a quarter of all of the novels, if not more. So over the years,
I thought that you had started at the beginning and kind of worked your way through.
No, I read The Freckled Shark was like from 37 or something when I first read it, and that's the thing with Doc. You don't really, at least in the 30s ones, I don't think you need to start at the beginning or go in order. I know Michael K. Vaughan is going in order, and that's a cool way to read them because they do have. In these, like John mentioned, they kind of mentioned the next one coming and stuff, but it's not necessary. I don't think. Just whatever one grabs you.
Yeah. Because he goes through. He introduces every character anyway and gives you their backstory.
Oh yeah, he always does. Because I guess he has to. I'm sure they did in The Shadow and other pulps too. They have, in case it is your first one you pick up off the newsstand, you got to know what's going on, and he always gives the background. And I usually kind of just glaze over those parts, other than sometimes the writer.
You can skim them. Skim them.
Sometimes he uses different ways to describe things, especially the trilling. He has like 16 different ways to describe what the trilling sounds like. But how about you, John? Do you have any favorites that you want to talk about?
Oh, gosh. Way too many.
Yeah. There are a lot of good ones.
There
are some, to be fair, that are not great. I don't think any of them that I've read are out and out terrible, but there's some like the Derek Devil that I read. I think it was Derek Devil, maybe it was Mad Mesa. It had this really cool setup of like this giant killer amoeba things, and you find out what it really is. But that one's pretty dull. So there are some that are, workmanlike and okay, but not, not to the heights of the best.
You got to have one that stands out, though, John, in your mind.
Or several. You don't have to just say one. You can give us a couple.
Let me see. Just, I guess, got the first one that I actually read was, if I can get there you go.
Oh,
The
that's
Crimson
a cool
Serpent.
cover.
Wow.
The Crimson Serpent. I read that years and years ago. I haven't read it for a long time.
And for those of you, the setup on that is Doc's aide Rennie is helping build a flood control dam in the swamps of, I believe it's Arkansas, southeastern Arkansas, when people suddenly start dying in grisly ways, and you have this troop of apparently Spanish conquistadors in Spanish armor wandering through the swamps, killing people. It was originally, I think it was Harold A. Davis wrote the original, and then Dent worked on it to clean it up a little bit. But I would have to say that some of my favorites at various times in his career, as you were talking about, you want to see read the violence, Jeff. And if you've read Land of Terror, that's probably the Doc at his most violent in that one. Because
he also jumps over like an 8-foot tall wall or fence or something, and he's doing some really superhuman stuff in that one.
Yeah, because it starts off. We're talking about how he went to various people to be trained growing up by his father, and everything that he would need to fight crime. So one of his favorite teachers is his chemistry teacher that he's going to meet, and the chemistry teacher is brutally murdered. Yeah. That sets Doc's off on it. He's on a trail of anybody that he finds, he just snaps their neck.
Yeah, he is no mercy in that book. My goodness. Yeah, it's great.
And,
I think if you had done that in all the books, they'd be more widely read today, probably by certain corners of BookTube. But they might have not kept their.
And you end up in a lost island that has a volcano, a giant volcano caldera, and inside the caldera are dinosaurs. So what's not to like in a book like that?
Exactly. That book has about that, and the Lost Oasis and the Phantom City about have it all. And of course, even though it's not as fantastical, the Polar Treasure.
Oh my God! You just read my mind, Jeff. I just picked it up.
I was fighting a polar bear barehanded.
This cover does not lie. He goes hand to hand. I don't think the polar bear is quite that big, but he does go mano y bear on polar bear in this one, and it's awesome.
But this is probably the first one I read after those 4 hardcovers, and I remember reading this, and I remember it sticking in my mind and really enjoying this one.
I think this is one of the rare bantams that is maybe matching its or close to its actual numbering.
Yeah.
So
number
I think
4.
Fourth
was
or
the
something.
fourth one written by Dent. And
you
got
the Phantom City, my favorite is actually the 10th, I think. So so they're pretty close. But many of the Bantams are off because I guess they released them in the order they thought would sell the best or something. I don't know. There's no rhyme or reason, really.
You were going to say the first appearance of the Fortress of Solitude?
No, the first appearance of Doc's submarine, the Helldiver.
The Helldiver. Yeah. When is the first appearance of the Fortress of Solitude? I know it mentions
it's actually kind of mentioned offhand in The Man of Bronze because he was up north.
Did they name it at that time?
They did not name it. It did not. I don't think it got named till much later. And then its first appearance was in The Fortress of Solitude, Pulp.
Yeah, and that is an excellent book with John Sunlight, the only villain who ever lived to come back for another book. So he comes back as Devil Genghis. Yeah, Fortress of Solitude is one of the later ones. I want to say late 30s, but it's really well written and quite funny. That's John Sunlight in parts because John Sunlight has a couple of big ladies, henchwomen. I think it's Titania and Gigantica or something. I forgot their names. Giantia, and they take on Ham and make him rather embarrassed to have his lunch handed to him. So.
That's an
Fortress
awesome
of Solitude, Pulp.
I love it.
It has an awesome concept because Sunlight has found a way to break into the Fortress of Solitude. He's found it, and he's stolen a bunch of Doc's gadgets, the ones that he keeps hidden away because they would could be badly used if fallen in the wrong hands, and he's selling them to foreign powers. And Doc is, of
weapons
course,
of mass destruction that Doc has created with his knowledge.
Doc is very alarmed at this, of course, and is trying to race to stop further of this happening. So that's quite a cool idea and a fun novel.
Yeah. Can you make John's picture bigger there?
Yeah, you bet.
I want to see that cover again.
Yeah, that was a pretty awesome cover. Give me just a second, and he should pop up right away there, I think.
Like I love these old pulp covers, man.
Oh yeah.
Fortress of Solitude. That's awesome. Boy.
I think that's something that Bantam, you hardly ever see his aides depicted, but I think Monk and some of the others get on the covers of the pulps quite a bit more often, don't they?
Yeah, that was Monk. There you go. That's Monk and Ham.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Trying to keep some. Yeah, they're making Monk look way more handsome than he's described. Yeah. Homely, with a face that old women and dogs liked. Yeah, there's some really wonderful writing in these books, as far as because Monk's quite the ladies' man. At least he tries anyway, and he's pretty good at. He's not as good as Doc at ventriloquism, which Doc uses frequently, but Monk's pretty good, and he talks through his pig habeas corpus. He has this ugly pig they pick up in the Phantom City. He finds him in some market in Marrakesh or something, and and that's where he first arrives. And then, of course, he uses him to tease Ham and talk. He also uses him to throw his voice to talk to attractive ladies. And I think Pat Savage says that he's got Robin's eyes and then Monk says, "What do you mean? Your eyes are always resting on limbs." So he was quite a leg man, apparently. So.
Apparently, Doc was a master of mimicry too. He could copy anybody's voice.
Yeah, I mean, there's basically nothing that he could use in his adventures that he wasn't good at.
And this, I would love this, but he didn't need a watch. He just in his mind, he could take. He knew what time it was.
Yeah. Any place in the world.
Amazing.
I mean, it's ridiculous if you think about it, but that's part of the fun of Doc. He's just he's so cool, and I like in the early books, and that was there in the Supreme Adventurer treatment that Nanovic did. He calls these guys he says brothers.
Yeah, his brothers.
Go here. He drops that after a while.
But he did in Fear Key too. I think it was Fear
not
Key.
that often, but he says brothers, right? Which is
brothers.
Cool.
Which I like that idea, and they should be that close, I mean, they saved each other's lives multiple times. So I mean,
usually he's saving their lives. They get captured a lot. Monk tends to, which is partly why he's lovable. He tends to go in like a crazed bull and get captured sometimes. But there's one book, I think it's Meteor Menace. There's one, maybe John remembers. Monk and Doc are in this cylindrical well or pit, and how they get out of it is they go back to back and climb up slowly out of this thing, and they work together really well. So as much as Doc is better than any of the other guys, they each have their skills to bring and their moments to shine. So
this Cargo Unknown,
I love that cover.
It's one of my favorites from the 1940s that I read, and that is Monk and Monk and Rennie are coming back it's taking place during World War II, and they're coming back on a submarine from England. And there's a saboteur on board the submarine who causes an explosion, and the submarine sinks. So Doc has to race against time to try and get Monk and Rennie out of the submarine, as well as all of the rest of the crew that are still alive on the submarine. And it's very well written, a wonderful, nice, taut action thriller.
I need to get a hold of more of these older books, because the ones I've read recently are good reads. Like Jim said, they're different by far. They kind of are a shock. You have to, maybe if you're reading them in sequence, you kind of gradually change.
Oh, that was an abrupt change for me. I went from the early ones right up to the later one.
I knew they were kind of so different that I could kind of go in with my guard up, I was surprised how good they were, though.
It was, I like, now that I've resigned myself to the fact, okay, I'm not reading necessarily a Doc Savage adventure. I'm reading a hardboiled mystery. It's a little easier to take. Now,
Well,
John,
to be fair, I haven't read those early 40s ones. The ones I'm reading are kind of in the period that John mentioned, where they were trying to bring it back a little bit more to the earlier Doc. So that's probably why they were the ones in here were pretty approachable for me. Yeah. But
well, that one I'm reading now, which I should finish very soon, 1946.
Okay.
These, I think, all these ones.
War, so they're getting back into the scientific detective thing, maybe.
Yeah, because the name of the pulp did change from Doc Savage to Doc Savage Science Detective there during the late mid 40s. I want to say 46 to 47, 48, something like that on the digest. I don't know. Let's see if I
know which ones Lester Dent didn't write. Like, is there a list of who?
Yeah, there should be a list in the back of his apocalyptic life where they.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some stuff that's come to light since then that Dent maybe worked more on some of the ones from Bogart or whatever. But if you look in the very back, it should have the list of them. It won't have.
I'd forgotten that. I read this multiple times,
and you'll see he'll there's a legend, and you'll see like a WB for William Bogart or
and let me see the cover on your apocalyptic. Okay, that is the first paperback, and Will Murray has changed. He gives the name of a ghost in there as Norman A. Daniels.
Okay, so one of them has been switched.
Norman A. Daniels does not exist. It was mainly Alan Hathaway, Ryerson Johnson, William Bogart, Lawrence Donovan, and I forget who else.
See here, you'll see like a little initial after.
Yeah.
At the end, but if you look at most of them, there's nothing. So that means that's Dent, generally. So he had his hands in most of them, and the ones he didn't. I think there were a few during the war, some period where Dent was really busy writing something else, and he didn't edit much at all, and so those came out pretty much straight. I think, was it Bogart? There was somebody who wrote like 7, and they just kind of released them almost in sequence. So.
Yeah, I've got this is Will Murray's Duende magazine #2, and he gives a big article in here on the ghosts of Doc Savage and Lester Dent. But he also, at that point, because this was written in 1978 or 79 after the Apocalyptic Life came out, and his list at that time of who wrote what, the submissions on them. And I don't know, because I know I couldn't find it. Meteor Press came out with a new version of Doc Savage's Apocalyptic Life a few years ago, where I think Philip Jose Farmer may still have been alive, so they had him edit whatever needed to be changed to what's become known since, mainly from Will Murray's investigations on it. And then I think they added some more stuff in it. And so it may have, excuse me, the current listing of who wrote, who wrote what on the various Doc Savages and that. But this Duende history, or Duende #2, was from 1977. So it came out.
Will Murray's been in the field for a while. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I do recommend this to anyone who wants to kind of know more about Doc Savage, because even if some of the information is out of date, this is a really entertaining kind of encapsulation of the high points of the characters. He gives a chapter.
Cool. It's a nice overview. I had the Playboy Press version of this. I ended up giving it away to a friend or something. I'd kind of like to get that back. But I don't know if it's any
Bible
different.
for years, even though you got to take the Wold Newton, monk being related to Professor Challenger stuff with the massive, barrel.
It's fun.
But he's just having fun.
It's nice to have fun with it. The Wold Newton, I love that. But yeah, exactly. You have to take it with a grain of salt,
Yeah, and also, this is Will Murray's collection of several.
I do have that. I think I have somewhere
articles that he wrote Writings in Bronze that's available on Amazon,
Oh,
Yeah, I
as
boy.
did.
well as his site.
Yeah.
And then this came out from Meteor House Press, Savageology. It's a collection of a lot of Philip Jose Farmer's articles on Doc Savage, as well as some of
Nice.
the other people
Yeah.
writing.
Well, partly what makes his apocalyptic life so good is that in writing it, Farmer went back, how he got a hold of all the pulps and everything. He went back and reread every single story.
Three, 4 times he read
Yeah,
them.
taking notes and everything. So he
Yeah.
cross references when he's talking about, like when he has the chapter on Monk, he gives quotes and dialogue and snippets and action from, dozens of novels over the course of the years, to kind of paint the picture of how Monk's fortunes rose and fell, etc., financially and things. So it's a pretty remarkable achievement, actually. So Will Murray has got much more inside.
Hey, and he did the same with Tarzan Alive. I love that book. He just did, incredible.
Yeah,
work
Tarzan
on that.
Alive is great. I was thinking of A Feast Unknown. That one makes me rich. So the less said about that, the better. But
Well, I know why you feel that way, but yeah, I saw what he was trying to do with it, and I read it.
yeah,
as a
I mean,
kid,
he made his career on being transgressive, right? So
Yeah.
that's what he was doing there.
yeah.
And then, for those of you who don't know, Will Murray started writing after Bantam printed all of the 182 Doc Savage original pulp stories. He started writing new Doc Savage pulp stories, and he started using various outlines that Lester Dent had that he never wrote.
Like Python Isle, right?
Yeah, like that he would go ahead, right? Speaking of which.
Hold on, John. Sorry, I should just keep you up there because you have so many cool things.
There's Python Isle.
This is a Will Murray written book using the Kenneth.
He writes it under the house name Kenneth Robeson. I think Farmer wrote one himself, Escape from Loki, right? Which talks about them escaping during World War I together or something. But yeah, the ones Murray wrote were using the same house name.
Yeah. White Eyes. And this is a good one that he wrote. The Frightened Fish.
They're quite a bit longer and more drawn out, I think I found.
But the good thing, is Will, The Whistling Wrath, and a bunch of others. And, I could go grab all the hardcovers of his.
He's done about 15 or so?
No, he's done. I think it's closer to 30 now.
Is it 30 now? Wow.
Yeah, he was able to write up till Condé Nast decided, we're going to start doing The Shadow and Doc Savage now. New Stories will hire James Patterson Incorporated to write Doc Savage and Shadow stories now. So we're pulling your rights to write any Doc Savage stories, Will. And that's why Anthony Tolan lost his ability to publish the last 3 Shadow pulps.
Oh, the timing was bad.
Condé Nast said, James Patterson, we'll make money. Everybody's actually read James Patterson.
I'm not taking a look at them, but I'm not interested from what I've heard.
They're all garbage, man. You go to the thrift store, like shelves of James Patterson, because everybody got rid of the James Patterson books. And I saw them on the shelf, the new ones, and I thought, new Doc Savages. And I read it. That's not Doc Savage. I'm sorry. And I'm not a fan of James Patterson to begin with. But
we should also talk about that. I'm trying to think of his name. Dang it. The guy who wrote Shane Black, who wrote the scripts for Lethal Weapon and all that. He came up with a new treatment, and he approached Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, to play Doc. And Dwayne was really interested for a while because they were keeping the being not so good around women part aspect. And that's gone nowhere, unfortunately. So maybe it's better that The Rock's not involved. He's too old probably now to play the part. But a lot of people are like, I don't want his casting. I thought he physically resembles Bauma's version of Doc more than anyone else I've ever seen. But
I'm going to take a page from Steve Donahue's book, and I'm going to say, you know what? These are favorites of mine, and I don't want anybody touching these. I don't want anybody making movies out of things that I love. And I'm all for that because they'll ruin it. They'll ruin it.
Yeah,
They'll just leave it alone.
Yeah.
it's pretty rare when you get someone like Peter Jackson to do the Lord of the Rings, and he futzed with them a little bit, but those are pretty great adaptations, really. So it's pretty rare to get that. So more often than not, you're going to be disappointed and angered, like
especially
I was with the Shadow movie with Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Sorry,
this
John.
is Shane Black's Doc Savage movie script.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have
you read it, John?
I've read it, and it's very good. It's a damn shame it didn't get made.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a feeling that because he's a good writer, so I was thinking that he would maybe come up with something. Because apparently he's a fan.
That was written before things were ideologically compromised.
Yeah,
that's probably true. It was probably written in the late teens, so 2000 teens. But wow, John, you have so much stuff. I bow to the wisdom of a far superior Doc fan for sure. We could talk about Doc for forever, and we could come back and talk about a particular book for a buddy read at some point in the future, or some other pulp heroes like the Shadow or something. We'd have to let Jim get caught up reading some.
Yeah,
but,
I'd love to sit and chat for hours. Yeah.
Any of the viewers, suggest books that you want us to talk about, we'll be happy to do that. I don't know about you guys, how much you have read about the Shadow or the Spider or any of the other pulp heroes, but
I've read about 3 or 4 Spider novels. I even read the 70s one, Hordes of the Red Butcher, where they call him Spider, not the Spider. He's just Spider. And they give him the turtleneck Mac Bolan kind of look, but there was basically the same story. But yeah, I've read the Spider, and I like the Spider, and I've recently got back into the Shadow and got a bunch of books from a estate sale lot. I probably paid too much for them, the paperbacks, but I really am enjoying those too. And they're so I'd love to talk about the Shadow at some stage at the very least.
Yeah. Well, it's been a lot of fun, guys. I mean, I really enjoyed the chat. I'm glad I was able to come on.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, John, for even putting the bee in my bonnet, so to speak, about this kind of idea. So we'll have to do it again, guys. So thank you very much for participating, and thanks for everyone for watching. Do you guys want to plug anything for your channel or anything upcoming that you want to talk about real quick before we go?
Jim?
I've got nothing right now to talk about.
John, you want to share anything, or do you it's up to you if you want to mention
just share 2 things upcoming. We're going to be doing a video next week on the Breckenridge Elkins Robert E. Howard stories. And then Sunday, March the 15th, I'm setting it up to do a live stream with the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, where they will reveal how much money they've raised with their raffle donation to help repair the Robert E. Howard House.
Yeah, make sure you guys donate to the Robert E. Howard House. I just actually signed up to be a member of the REHF. I'm the mid plan, $49, and I made
foundation.
The foundation, and I made another donation, another $25 donation. That's my second one, but I think I used a different account sign on, so it's only telling me I donated once. But anyway, I mean, if you're out there, make sure you donate to the helping the Robert E. Howard Museum and House. It's a great cause.
100% of donations go directly to the house. None of us on the board of directors for the Robert E. Howard Foundation. We're all volunteers. We don't get paid. We spend our own money to help make the foundation run and promote Robert E. Howard in Cross Plains, Texas. So, be assured that any money you give, 100% is going directly to the house, and nobody else is taking it, because Project Pride of Cross Plains, that owns the house, they are also in all volunteer groups too. So,
well, that's great. Yeah, everyone should chip in for that for sure. And I need to make another donation for sure. So thanks again so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And
thanks for having us on.
Thank you
for watching, everybody. And we'll talk to you again. Thank you.
It's always good to talk to you guys.
Yep. Enjoy it.
You too. Take care.